Hello there, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to show how to create a WPF toggle button, something like this. I have been searching for different ideas, but I think I finalized on this one. So we prepare something like this in our toggle button, and whenever we press on, so basically our bool value is true. It is checked, and we turn on to a green color or some other color of the user choice, and then we show text, and then we turn it off, we show a text, or we also change the color. I will start a WPF .NET Framework project. There we go, our application is ready, and this one is kind of like a user control which we will be using in other projects. So we need one more. Let's call this project as a new WPF dummy project, or maybe demo project. Toggle button demo. Okay, so just remember, this toggle button demo is your main application which you will use to run. And this WPF toggle button is nothing but your user control. So in case you have your own library, you can just add this toggle button concept to that library. So as we say about library, it should be a library, it should not be a Windows application. So let's change this to a class library. Once it is a class library, app.xaml cannot be present. So when you build, it should return an error saying that application definition something is not possible. So let's delete this. And if we try to rebuild, it should go well now. And we don't need a main window as well. Let me, but okay, let us have this main window just to prepare the layout. And once the layout is prepared, we will start working on our application. So remember, this layout is only for this main window is only because I'm trying to prepare a layout. Other than that, nothing. So let's start with a border, and this border, let us give a height of 50, width of 150, and it should now be in the center. Let's give it corner radius 10, and border brush is gray, border thickness 1, and the height is 50, right? So half of your height. So what is the half of your height? Which is 25. So that's why you have this corner radius. What if you make 50 itself? That's going to be an oval. So let's keep it 25. And inside this border, I'm going to have or not inside this border, let this border be my main border, or let's call it as bottom, or let's keep it base. The second one is we need another border same like this. So let me just copy this one again, and this one is going to be my switch. The switch, the height and width are going to be same, and well, instead of a border I can even go with an ellipse, but I will just stay with the border at present now, and it could be filled with, so background is equal to purple. No, this time I'm going with dark gray. Okay, so this is my switch, and the switch can be present in horizontal location left. Okay, so this is now going to this so this goes towards this one, so we don't need that. So we need everything to be present inside one location. So what I will do, let us put them all like height is equal to auto and width is equal to auto. Nope, that doesn't work that way. We need this to be present inside a single grid. So this grid horizontal alignment is center, vertical alignment is center. But even that doesn't make sense for me. What if I want this all to be okay? Anyhow, let us keep it as it is now. And now we have a button here. If I give right, it goes towards the right. If I give left, it comes towards the left. And the color of this one, we can choose the color in two different ways. One is based upon the switch location, whether the switch is in the left or switch is in the right, we can change the color of the border. We put a normal property trigger, and then based upon the value, we can easily change this. So currently, let's keep it as background is equal to Indian red. Okay, so this is now turned off. In case I go towards the right, I turn this into, I think, long green. Wow, that's better. Let's say light green. So light green and Indian red. So I somehow get the values there. And inside this, let us put the text block. And text is equal to, now this is on. And text, it's not a text box, it is a text block. And horizontal alignment center, vertical center. No, it should not be in the center. It should somehow be here in the center of this region. How do I identify this? Let's make this width 100 and prepare a grid inside this. Grid dot column definitions. Let's split this into two columns and put this one text block inside that and say grid dot column is equal to 0. Whereas if my this goes to my left side, the color changes to Indian red and the column changes to 1 and text changes to off. So what are the things that I have here? First thing is I have a switch itself, and then I have my text holder. So I have my switch, I have my text holder, and switch itself could have a background. And then again, switch itself, when I say that switch itself could have a background, switch can also have a margin of 5. No, it's not like that. I think I know what I need. Instead of a border, let us put it instead of the height and width, let us remove the height and width. Doesn't work. What if we have the switch with the 2B48 and 48, and then we have a margin of 2, margin of 4, or 2. We have some gap there. What if this is 40, 40, and margin of 5? So this is also fine. So our switch should have its own height or width or size something, and then it should have a corner radius, and it should also have this one. What if we don't want this corner radius at all? We want it to be a square shaped one. So then we don't apply the corner radius. Okay, so that is also fine. So with the corner radius, we can also manipulate the shape, and that's it. This is what we need. We need some kind of background. And we also saw some other one, like what if this shape should go beyond that. So maybe we make it 60 comma 60 and say corner radius 30, and let's remove the margin. This goes beyond it. This is also fine, and in this case maybe you make the width as 40 or like 30 and make the 15. So this comes like this. So yours is much bigger, and then you come towards the left and come towards the right, and your button itself could have some kind of let's say light golden model or something like this. So that makes sense. So we have, instead of 60, let's make it 50 50 25, and I will also go here and make 50 and 25. That's fine. So this is what we need. Finally we have something, but now based upon some properties we need to manipulate them and we need to change them. So now that we are here, the first part is over. So the next step is to start creating the control which will have the properties which will be dynamically modified during runtime. So for that, let's right click, add. This time we are not going to use an user control, we are going for a custom control. So remember, it's not user control, it is a custom control. So you don't have a custom control here. Go to new item, WPF, not user control, you are going for custom control. So let's name this how do I name this, uh, let's say simple toggle button. So we have this theme automatically created, and if you have already followed some of my videos on custom controls, you would know that the name of the folder is really important, and you need themes, you cannot change that, and you need a generic .xaml, you cannot change that as well. And simple toggle button is totally up to you. You can keep it anywhere you want. I will keep them as controls and put this inside simple toggle button. It's okay, no problem. Save this. So what is the generic? Generic, let us just bind our value. So here I will have one more resource dictionary, or maybe I will just copy this generic here and rename this as simple toggle button resource dictionary, RD. So simple toggle button and simple toggle button resource dictionary. Basically for each CS file we have a XAML file. CS file contains the code behind logic, and XAML file contains the UI that will be used. And generic is nothing but where you will be binding your other dictionary. So I don't want to keep, I want to keep it generic. So resource dictionary dot merge dictionaries. Here I will merge resource dictionary source is equal to, let it be here. And coming back to the properties, I take my application assembly name, not the default space name, but the assembly name. I will take my assembly name and say pack URI pack. I forgot the pack URI, so let us go find it in Google. Pack URI. I've been using it for a long time, but I already forgot it. Here. No, not here. We need the component one. Pack application reference assembly components of folder. Cross colon triple backslash component. Okay, so pack application, three components. Then I don't have a backslash, I believe. Yeah, there is a backslash. The name of the one is WPF Toggle Button component, and this is present in folder called controls, and this is present in simple toggle button rd.xaml class. That's it. So what we have done now, we have move this into a folder, and this simple resource dictionary I'm merging it here. In case I'm going to prepare another new WPF control, I will put this inside the control, and I will just merely merge it inside my generic so that it becomes easy to follow. And the next step is also there in the assembly info.cs. I go down, go down, go down, go down, go down here. Let us create Windows markup. Do we have this one? Windows reflection is there. Windows markup is there. Using system dot windows dot markup. This is a small, nice assembly XML namespace definition. Okay, so what I'm going to say, schemas dot h9 dot. This is anything you want. This is it's totally up to you. You can give anything. You might have already seen that it's not going to download from there, so don't worry. Demo. So what is this name? WPF toggle button, right? WPF toggle button. Plus. We don't have this WPF control set, so I will just comment it out. We have a namespace called WPF toggle button, and that WPF toggle button I have put inside here. So in some other place I can just directly call this schema, and what happens, I can easily get the reference to this namespace. So now we have this WPF toggle button. That's totally fine. So the next step is I don't want to all these things. Let us forget about this. My simple toggle button is not going to derive from control. I'm going to derive directly from toggle button. Toggle button, where is my toggle button? Toggle button is not here. So I think this is coming from primitive control. Using system windows dot controls dot primitives toggle button. So from toggle button, I'm going to directly derive something, and the name of the button is simple toggle button. That is fine. The remaining things we will shortly define, and this one is also taking from local simple toggle button, and the template control template blah 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 blah. That's totally fine. So here what we will do, instead of adding any properties, we will straight away add our simple toggle button with our UI, and then we will see how it works. But before that, we now have some base setup, right? Let us try to see if it works. So in this reference, add reference, and projects WPF toggle button, fine. And now that we have the button, go to your main window. This is not our toggle button demo, and okay, so we did not add that in inside our WPF toggle button. We directly added that in demo. So let me cut it out from demo, copy this, put it here inside our your library, and go back here, delete. Let's put grid. Cool. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to call or add a namespace, XML namespace. I will call it as WPF demo as WD, H9 schemas Haley demo. So where is this coming from? This is coming from your assembly info. So the good thing about this is, if you have like 10 or 20 namespaces, you don't have to create generally when you are referring from assemblies, you will be adding something like this, XML namespace test is equal to WPF toggle button. You will add something like this, WPF toggle button, and then you will go on, and this is also not correct. This is CLR namespace you will have from assembly. So you will have so many things, and finally um, if you have 10 or 20 namespaces, each namespace you need to add a key like this. To avoid all those things, you put everything inside a XML definition with the same schema. So someone is going to refer the schema, they will get access to your WPF toggle button. So that's the idea behind it. So now that we have added our WD here, WD simple toggle button. So currently simple toggle button is nothing, but is it going to work? Let's try. You run your simple toggle button demo. Your simple toggle button should work. It should not return any error. Currently, let's see. There we go. Our application has loaded, and there is no error at present. This is good. This is really good. Let's close down. And now, because you have only a border, you have nothing else. So now what we do, we copy our existing implementation with the grid from here. Copy this and put it inside the border. So this is kind of like let's remove this outer border. We just need a grid. That's better. So now if we run, you will have a small toggle button in your screen, which will be the 50, 100, whatever you have. Like it should not have any other properties, but you should have now. So this is your toggle button. So the next step that remains is for us to add some properties through which we can assign some values, and based upon the values we manipulate our UI. So that's the next step. So for that we need some properties. Before that, let us just ensure our whole application is um, properly defined. And before that, we already have some kind of existing properties. Instead of us adding new properties, let us go and check all the new, existing properties. If I press F2 over the toggle button itself will have so many properties, like is checked, horizontal alignment, left alignment. You see, like it has so on click button base. Let us go to button base. It already has lot of command, click event, and I command, and even if you go further down, you have content property, you have you are finally deriving it from control and framework elements. So we have border, brush, border, font, color, background. All those properties are already there. So first, let us make use of those properties, and then we will go back to adding our own custom properties. So first thing first, horizontal alignment is center and vertical alignment is center. Do we need this? So shall we try running our application and at the same time try to edit it to see if it is working? Probably it might not work, but let us try. This too, let us remove and save. You see, it doesn't work. So if we reload, what is this? Hot reload. It doesn't work. Restart application. So now we have this issue. So that is totally fine. So instead of having this inside a grid, now I think we will put everything inside a border first, and just take this, put it inside. Now as the next step, this border itself should have certain properties deriving from the templated parent. For instance, background should be from template binding background, and now there is one problem. If we put everything inside a border, so what we are planning to do is this border here, we are putting it outside. So the overall border with the background and everything is going to be the base. So in our application, the base will be the bottom, and above which we will have a grid and then another border. So now the problem here is when we have some setup like this, our second switch, the switch cannot grow bigger than the size of our application. So that is totally fine. For us now, at present, we are trying to achieve something. So we will just take this border out and ensure that base is above everything. And after the base is above everything, we have a grid inside, which is our text holder itself. The text holder is our second one. And now this is what I will do. I will just okay. So let it be here. I will cut this and paste it again. Okay, so we have a border inside which we have a grid. Upon the grid, we have the text, and finally we have a switch. The switch we can move towards the left or towards the right. Now, at this situation, we should be able to have everything contained within the same border. So the switch will not go away from the base. Let us test that, and then we will start adding the properties. Here we go. Now I'm going to try something. I'm going to change the properties and see whether they are getting reflected or not. We did it before, it was not working, so I'm not sure this should work at all here. So let's try to change the color. Green, okay, so we get the green, and this horizontal alignment will go towards the right side, so this is fine. And this one, if we change it to grid 0, we get it here, and the text should change. So we are now in a situation to do this, and our margin is not working fine. The border thickness is okay, but somehow this is not properly aligned. If we go here to our main border, this is fine, and our another border is also fine. The size is 50, 100, and the corner radius 25. Let's try to put a margin of 4. Okay, so now the problem here is this one horizontal alignment is right, but our vertical alignment should also be in the center. Vertical alignment is in the center, so this is fine. And margin, instead of setting the margin here, let's remove the margin, and now it is properly aligned. Let's change the shape to 48, 48, and 24. Maybe let's make it 45, 45. This is okay. So now we have managed to get the switch and text holder and base everything set properly. So now the next step would be, let us stop the debugging and go ahead with adding the properties. Now if we see, we have two color properties or maybe three color properties. Color properties are what is the color that when the status is on, or what is the color when the status is off, and what is the default color. So we have three colors. Those three are the base properties, and then the border thickness, height, with everything can come from the application itself. Sorry, the template itself. So that we will define like template binding height, and this one we will define template binding width, and the corner radius. For a control, there is no corner radius, so we need to create a property called corner radius. And border brush, yes, it should be there. Template binding border brush and border thickness. But why am I doing this? Why am I just doing the template binding? I will show an example. Now the template binding border thickness here, we are not binding it to the template. What is our template? So our template is control template is for simple toggle button. So which means the simple toggle button itself will have some properties for width, border brush, background, everything. So instead of us defining a separate property or assigning the value, what we are doing here is we are binding the this particular borders. So here the base border, this particular borders height and width to the simple toggle buttons height and width. So that's what we're doing here. Template binding the height and width. So when I say template binding, whatever is the template's height and width is applied here. So for us, the template is simple toggle button and toggle button base. So whatever property we try to bind here should be present inside your template. So I, for a fact, know that height, width, border brush are all a part of control and framework element. That's the reason why I directly do this. But if I try to bind something which is not present, like corner radius, template binding corner radius, I know that corner radius is not a property. So when I try to build this, I will find an error, or even if I don't build this, I find an error saying that corner radius is not recognized in simple toggle button. So let us go back and keep it 25. Now I will show an example in our demo application. So whenever we change the height and width, this height and width should also get changed. For instance, let us do a demo debug, and then we will see how this is getting modified. Now our application is taking the shape of the whole control region. Our height and width are now taking the whole shape. Let's now start with the height and width. Let's say height is equal to 50, and you see the height here is also now 50. The width is equal to 150, and now width is also 150. Now what we didn't do is if I go back to my control here, we did not bind our border thickness and background. So when you change the background here, it will not affect. Shall we see? Background is equal to purple. It doesn't affect because background is not bounded directly to the property of the template. So we are directly applying the property in this border. That's the reason why whenever we change the border in simple toggle button, it is not propagated down. But if you do a template binding, for instance, like this, template binding background, and save this, you could see background is equal to purple. You will get the color here. But if you don't do that and directly say this is green, maybe let's say green, the color is not propagated down. So that's a base idea here. Now corner radius, we know that controls does not have corner radius. You need to implement corner radius. And border thickness, we have one here, so which means if we give border thickness is equal to 5, this will not be shown. Border brush is equal to gray. This is now the gray is shown. Maybe it's not visible. I'll make it red. The border brush is shown because border brush we are template binding, but border thickness we are not template binding it. So if I do a template binding border thickness as well, then we are also getting that. So I go back here and say border thickness is 1 and border brush is gray. So now this is how we create our own custom control and also apply the properties which gets propagated to the other properties which are composite properties. So inside our toggle button we have different XAML framework elements. So we have a border, we have a grid. So we can take the properties from our simple toggle button or any control for that matter and propagate it down to our other framework elements. Now that we know how it works, the next step is to let me go back here. Okay, the next step is to just define our function. So what are the properties that we need to add which is not present? We know that for this one we need the color, three colors. What is the color when the background is going to be like the on color, off color, and we have one more thing called as null color. So because the boolean or bool is not only true or false, it can also be null. We have a nullable boolean as well. So there is a possibility the boolean itself is not there. So we need three colors, or maybe two colors is enough. And always, whenever the boolean is null, we can just give gray. So we can do that one, no worries there. And so now we have two colors, and then we need to define the text as well. Text, we think this is on and off. We can also get on text and off text from the user. User can even customize them by themselves. And finally, we have something else, which is a switch. So this switch will have a width by itself, and we will say that switch is going to be height and width are going to be equal. So we will just say switch size. So height and width will be equal, and the corner radius, for whatever corner radius we apply to the outer will also get applied to the inner. So those are the things. So first we'll start with whenever you are doing with this, the first step is to create override a product, override on apply template. Okay, this is not protected, this is public. Public override void on apply template. So what you need to do whenever you apply the template, maybe we don't do anything at present. If your application itself is going to be more complex, and before applying the template you want to do some color changes or parsing or validations, you can put them all in the on apply template. But mostly for this is toggle button is very straightforward and simple. We don't do that, and this is a static simple toggle button. So this is static property. We need a static constructor, we need a normal constructor. So we have a constructor. So after these two are done, finally we go ahead with the properties. Corner radius, where can I find the corner radius? Go here. So I will go to my corner radius somewhere and see, like just select here, press F12. It will take me to the property of corner radius. Corner radius itself is having a property called corner radius, which is coming from system.windows. So we need that property here. Let's go back to our simple toggle button, and here let us say that we create a property called corner radius. So let us, we have the a shortcut key, or how do you call this? Shortcut key, or okay, I don't remember, keyboard shortcuts, something like that. So that one we call it as prop db. So property for DP, property for dependency properties. So whatever you create inside a simple toggle button, if you create it as a dependency property, then you will be able to bind it. So prop DP, and I press my tab 2 times, and we create the property. So my property system.windows is already there. So my property is corner radius, and I will use the same name, corner radius. And this is the type of owner is simple toggle button, and I need to give a default value. Default cannot be 0, because corner radius should have a default value, but that's okay, we will go there. And name is corner radius, so I will just say name of corner radius. Let me delete this one and delete this as well. Okay, now that I have something, I need to go with my default value. At this stage, if I give my default value as 0, it will be throwing an exception during runtime. Why? Because corner radius itself is a structure. Structure cannot be nullable, or you can't even give null. Structure should be equal value. So you can't just give null here, which will also throw exception. So let me set. If I go down and see, this is a static property, so I need a static value. Private static corner radius, we'll call it as default corner radius, new corner radius. Let's keep it 0, 0, 0.0. The reason why I put 0.0 is it is expecting a double value, so 0.0 to ensure that it is double and not an integer. So now I have a corner radius. So first let us try to make use of this corner radius and see that we don't have any issues there. Instead of corner radius 25, let us bind template binding corner radius, and now it shows error, but that's okay because we still didn't build it. Let me build it and see. Okay, that's successful and the error is also gone. We will not only do that, we will also use the same corner radius to our switch as well. So we have the same corner radius here, and let us do a quick debug, and then after, if everything is fine and we are sure that our our property bindings work, we will go ahead and apply that everywhere. So let me go to the main window, and now the corner radius is 0, corner radius 5, now that's there, corner radius 25, that's there, corner radius 40, that's there as well, corner radius 10, 15. So we can be sure that our corner radius is now working without any issues. So that's fine. So let us keep this out. And now let us go ahead and apply the other properties. The most important property here is color. Color, what is the color that we need for the on and off? That's what we need. So let us add that property, which is the color on and off. We will go with the prop dp and let this be a brush, and let's call this as color on, or maybe on color, or no, let's keep it color on. And this one is also simple toggle button, and we need to set the default color. We will do that shortly. And another one, prop dp and brush, this is going to be color off. Color off is also simple toggle button, and we need the default values here as well. The default, I'm going to keep them as solid color brush. So default brush, this one is default on color is equal to brushes dot, let's take Indian red or green. We were trying some different green, sea green or sin green something. So let's say light sea green. I will go here and try the color now. This one, light sea green is this color, which doesn't look like a green. So maybe green to spring green. This is too bad. Green, yellow, no. Green, lawn green, no. Forest green, at least this makes a little bit. Even this is not nice. Okay, let's just keep medium sea green. That's it. Okay, this is a little bit okay. Medium sea green, and come back here and sea green, medium sea green. Okay, and private static brush default of color. Indian red. Okay, so we have Indian red. So the default on color is going to be default on color, and we have default off color. So we have two colors now, on color and off color, and then that's it. We already have another property called as, since it is a toggle button, we already have that is checked property, whether it is checked or not. The next thing that we need is text, prop dp string on text or let's say this doesn't make sense. Label on, and this one I can directly add the value here. It's not like difficult. So on is my on label. So we have now color on, color off, label off, and the default values on the corner radius as well. So let's go ahead here. And this background, now there is one more thing. We have two colors now, right? Like we have like border, color on and color off. Like how do you define like which color is to be applied as a background? So to do that, we need some kind of a trigger or a data trigger to be based upon the is checked property. If I go to the toggle button itself has something called is checked. So based upon the is checked value, we define the background color. So I don't want to do it here. I don't want to make it bloated. So I will just create a new style for a border. I will just give a key as well. So internal uh, toggle. So any name that you want. Internal toggle button base. Internal toggle button base, and target type is border. So in this border, I'm going to say setter, let's say border of this height, and after the height value is equal to, we cannot use template binding here. Reason why: template binding works only when you are inside a control template. So when you are trying to define a template, you will be able to do the control template binding. But if you are inside directly a type and you are only setting the property, you don't have access to template binding. So only you have access to binding. But you have something called relative source templated parent. So what we are trying to say here is, whenever you are defining this inside a control template and it has a templated parent, from the parent, so if I put this bar style inside for a border inside this control template, now the templated parent is simple toggle button. If I'm going to do the control template for another type, then that will become the templated parent. So whichever is the templated parent, that templated parent's height will be applied here. It's I will copy this and I will do the same for width and corner radius and what else? Border thickness, with corner radius, border thickness, border brush, height with corner radius, border thickness, border brush, and finally the background is also there. Background is what we are going to do using a trigger. So we will do the width to width, corner radius to corner radius, border thickness to border thickness, brush to brush. And finally, for the let's do some kind of a trigger, style dot triggers. Let's start with the data trigger, and the first data trigger is this is we will have a binding. So what is the data that we are trying to bind? So we are going to check whether the simple toggle buttons is checked property is true or not. If it is checked is true, then we need to give color on. If it is false, we need to give color off. So that's what we are going to do. So binding is binding and is checked. We know that there is a property in my templated parent, but the border doesn't know which is going to be its templated parent because we are only in the target border. That's totally fine. So relative source is equal to relative source templated. In case the parent does not have an check property, this data trigger itself will be ignored. So you don't have to worry about any exceptions being thrown. And now there is one more thing. This is a Boolean property, and if when you are giving something here, it should be a Boolean property as well. You cannot give a true string value. So to do that, I'm going to create something. This one usually I create it in a separate place, but in this case I'm going to directly create it. I'm going to say I will just take the system XML namespace sys is equal to this should come from system from mscarblib. Let's try the system is coming from assembly system itself, but I need a system from mscarblib. Let me try if I could get that system. So system is present in many places. I'll just say this one, system from mscarblib. I took system.collections and then I made it a system. So from the system, now if I say system.boolean and say key true. So when someone says true, then I need true. System.boolean. My key is going to be false. Then the value is false. So this is a string which gets converted into a boolean true or false. So this way I can be sure that when my check is true, I need to do something. So what I need to do, I need to set the property background with value binding color. What is my property here now? If it is true, I need the property color on. It is coming from relative source templated parent. So it's fine. Now let me close this, and the same one I will copy. I will paste back and say that if check this false, then my background is color off. Color off. And what else is there now? And I also have the is checked value could also be null, because a boolean also could be null. We have nullable boolean. So let me copy this and put it back here and say whenever my is checked value is null I can directly give x null. My background is going to be gray. I don't want to go there. I'll just say that whenever my background is null, I will go with a gray color, so it will be easy for me to understand. So now based upon the is checked value, my border or the back colors are now defined. That itself is great. And corner radius, what about the corner radius? Corner radius is also binding. Now corner radius, border thickness, everything else is binding. The only thing that we need is style is now going to be based on nope, style is going to be static resource internal toggle button base. So this is our style now. So we have a style applied. So forget about the text block at present. The text, we will do another text block property same like this. We'll do another style for text block and we will just apply it here. For this border, we only have the template binding for let's test that now. So now what we need is whenever we change the now this is off, but actually our button itself is on the right side, so ignore the button. So when you press this for the first time, you are at least able to change the color. So based upon the is checked value, first initially it was red, you are changing the color. That's what we need. And now you should also be able to modify the colors here. Instead of background, if you set color on is pink, and color off is yellow. So if it is off, yellow, on, pink, off, yellow. So you should be able to now define the colors on and off. If you remove it, the default values of green and Indian red will be taken there. So now that property is working. Now the next thing that we need to do is this small switch. We need to define a size for the switch. Now currently what happens is we defined a default switch value. So let's say like in case we increase this to 60, our switch is also there. So we should be able to adjust the switch size. This switch size should be by default it should take the size of the size of the parent control, so that we will have the same height and width. So let us now try to add one property for this switch, and we will also do one more thing. Whenever we set the background, let us take the background color and put it on the switch. So let us now try to add, go back to here, and in this border we already are defining the corner radius, but for the height and width we need to do something. Border radius, border brush, we will just do the same like that. Border brush is equal to template binding border brush, and border thickness, we let us always keep it as 1, irrespective of whether the overall border thickness increases or not. And this one background will now template binding background. Now the background itself is empty or null. That's the reason why we are seeing this, but that is okay. And this horizontal alignment of right and vertical, these things will change or modify based upon the is checked value. If the checked is true, it will go right or it will go left. This is a very simple property. We don't need to create a separate style for this. We will do it directly here. And first thing is, let's go here to the simple toggle button. Let us always define a background. Set a property background value is equal to some yellow. We gave golden yellow something. So we have the background and the template binding background, but still it is not updated. So let us just do restart application. So let's see if our color is there. Yes. So the next step is here adjusting this border with the trigger. So style, target type, X type border, and this border, what I will do, the first thing, the thing that we are going to modify or control is our horizontal alignment. So by default the value is going to be on the left side. So whenever it is turned off, it should be on the left side. So that is done. The reason why it says error is that child does not support okay, because we are not setting the property directly, we are setting the property of style. So border dot style, you set this and it will say that the horizontal alignment is already set. So remove this horizontal alignment. So now we know that this is on the left side now, and horizontal alignment is left, and based upon the trigger, the trigger value is style dot triggers data trigger. Let me go ahead and directly take the one sample from here and set it. So if the is checked is true, then our horizontal alignment should be on the, if it is checked, then horizontal alignment should be on the right, and if the checked is false, horizontal alignment should be on the left. Fairly straightforward. So let us restart the application, so we will see the changes now. Okay, so on starting it is on the left side. When I press, when it is turned on, it goes to the right side. So this is now working. So from left to right is working, and the border corner radius should also work. Let us set the corner radius is 20, so that should also work now. That is fine, and height with everything is working. So the only thing that remains is this size of this yeah, what is this switcher should match or somehow be closer to the it should be reasonable. So that's what we need. A final step is to do this switch, and the text is also there, right? So we will do the text first, and then we will do the switch. So finally everything will be done. Let us first deal with the text now. I will go to simple toggle button, and we already have the label on and label off. So this should go to this text block. Text block, we already have the default label on and label off values. The horizontal alignment and vertical alignment should also change. Either we can create a separate, if we don't want, so here we have this clutter. Let me first stop this. If you want to have a very clean readable version, a readable solution, you can create a new property like this. So let us just create so what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to make border brush as well. So we don't need border thickness, that is there. So here we are giving corner radius, border brush, background is also there. So that's what we need. Give background, and we need to have the style dot triggers that we can take from here. Horizontal alignment, by default the value is left, that we will say set a property horizontal alignment value is left, and based upon is checked values we move it to the right or left. That is fine. So we don't need this one here. So now it will become easy to read. Corner radius, border brush, both are not here, and the background is also not here. And now we can say style is equal to static resource internal switch border. Okay, so now this becomes easy to read. We have one base border and we have one switch border, and finally we have the text block for which the grid dot column will change. So I will create one more style for the text block. Internal toggle button T block. Okay, here what are the things that we have? We need a horizontal alignment is center, that is fine. Vertical alignment, let me first copy this or cut this off, and let's try to set a property horizontal alignment value is equal to center, set a property vertical alignment value is equal to center, and the main thing is the grid dot column has to change. By default set a property grid dot column value is 0, so it's always going to be on your grid dot value should be on the 1. So because by default your switch will be on the left side and the value will be on the right side. Now based upon the properties the trigger data trigger, whether it is checked or not, if it is checked if it is true, then we say text is equal to binding label on, that's what I believe, label on label off, label on, which is coming from relative source templater parent. Now let me copy this and paste here. Now this is going to be label off, and there is one more thing as well, which is your null value. Maybe at this point we don't have it, but when the value is null we directly say null. So the text value is null. We just write the value itself as null, or maybe we can give some double dash, that's fine. So we know that this is now going to be a null bool value. So not only this text, we also need to switch the grid dot column as well. So Grid dot column, what happens is when we are on the left side, the label is on, our text should be on the left side because our switch will be on the right side. And when our text is off, so our switch will be on the left side and our text will be on the right side. Now this is fine. So now we have done for text block as well. So text block style is equal to static resource text block. So we have now done with all these three things. The only thing that remains is the switch size. Switch size is we can have one single property. We don't want length and width. Let us try to create a property called as prop dp double, and this let this be like a switch width, and this is also simple toggle button, and default value let it be 10.0. Name of switch width. Okay, now that we have them all here, now there is one more thing that I would like to do. I go back here, and in this border let me not put the height. Let us only deal with the width. So if I do not put the height, what happens, it will take the size of the parent border, so we will have like a same shape. So only for this one we'll have template binding. Template binding is switch width. That's right. So we now have the switch with the and corner radius is also set up. Everything else is fine, and only thing that remains is to test whether this all works well. Okay, now our height is wrong. The width is also 10. That's the reason why we don't see that. That's fine. So what I will do, I'll first go to my toggle button and say that my width is not 10, my width is 30 by default. Did we set any default height and width value? For our simple toggle button, we did not set any default height and width value. So let's set a property height value is equal to default height is 50 or maybe 40, and set a property width the value is uh, twice or thrice. So maybe 143 or 12, 120. I will keep it at 120. So three times the size. That's okay. And if the height is 40, I will also keep the width as default width as 40. Let's keep it like this. And the default some other value is there. Corner radius, default corner radius, we already have a value for default corner radius. If I go back to a corner radius, default corner radius is 0. It's okay, that is fine. We need that one. And let's go back to our UI, and we have the border for which we have the height, and this is also okay. We don't have to discuss about toggle. So if I press this, the button is very small, you don't see that. If I restart application, you should be able to see at least a bigger line now, or a longer line now. So that's a line. Maybe the height is not there, but that's okay. And when it is turned on, we get this on button switch on the right, and text is also moving here and there. If I go to my main window and say label office, let's say um, power down, maybe power down, and label on is something. Label on is power on or power up. So this is also now working. So we can see that this is totally fine. Maybe we will remove this height and width and see that our default height and width values are taken. And corner radius 20 also we can remove and see we have this one. So by default the value is what height is 20, right? So corner radius is 20 will make sense. 15 will also make sense. Okay, now that we have it, I will remove the label values because we don't need to use that now. So we go back with this one, and we also have foreground is white. So foreground also no changes. Foreground is we did not set this property, but this property is coming from your control or framework element. So the only thing that remains is the switch height. Somewhere we have made a mistake. The switch is a border which is present in another border. This border has a default height, so that's why we have the height. And our border width is there. The height should be taking the height of the parent border. It should not be going down. So let's go to this internal toggle button switch and see why is that happening. Let's try to put this inside a grid, and just for testing, let's try to put this inside a grid and then see if it's working. And let's try to restart the application. You still have that issue. What about the height is equal to 30? We have it here, but we should not have that one like this. We should have the height of the application directly, and we should at least fill this up. The height should fill. We should not take it there. Maybe the height is equal to auto will not work. Huh, I understood the error. We have the vertical alignment is center. When you set the center, the height will be obviously central. So you know the height will turn to auto. If I remove it, let's see if I have any, if we have any kind of error there. Uh, now there is no error. That's perfect. So if I adjust the height, the switch also should increase. We don't have the height yet, but let's say the height is 70. Switch height also increases. And separately, if I want to set the switch width, I can say like switch width is 120 or maybe 60. The switch itself is now adjusted, a switch with itself. So on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off. Now there is one more thing. If you see, there is small border. Let's try to do something. Corner radius is 70, right? Half of 70 is 35. So now it is in a circular form, and the height of this one and switch width should be same, so that we have a square shape. So now this is kind of like a button, and let's make the width is equal to 180. Now you see this button itself, the small circle or the switch itself is having a small border there. If you want to do or adjust that, you need to set up a margin. Let's try to set up margin. And how do we set up a margin? Let's go back to our border, and let's try to give a margin and see how it goes. Margin of 10. So if we set the margin, this is margin, and we need to adjust the switch width to maybe 50. So we get this adjustment. But you know, currently what I will do, I will not do this. I will just leave the margin. So this is for you to understand that still we can manipulate, and there are a lot of ways how you can customize your application, customize your control. Currently, I will leave it at it. So now we have like on, off, and if you want to change, you will apply the label on, label off, and the switch with and all those items. Now there is a interesting thing. You remove the corner radius, you turn it into a square, and you still have it. And the on off is also applied. Is there something else that we could do? We can even think about setting up a shadow. That will be a nice touch. So I will go with shadow now. So wherever you have the whole application, you need to set up a shadow away from it. So let's try to set up a border, which will take the height is equal to template binding height. Binding height. and with this equal to template binding width. Now both of them I will put it inside the same grid, so we know that both are occupying the same space. So we have a grid inside which we have two. The border alone, this is going to have a height and a width, and background let us always keep white. So now finally when I adjust the border effect, border dot effect, let's give drop shadow effect, and we are not seeing the effect here yet, but what we will do, we'll just restart the application to see how the effect looks. So we now have a effect, and in this effect we have blur radius is equal to 8, and depth if we give depth as 0, what happens is it will be uniformly applied. So depth is 0, so it is uniformly applied in all direction, and blur radius, let us make it 10. And we have one more thing, which is color. Let's make the color as red, or maybe purple. Purple doesn't work much. Green. So if the shadow is going to be 20, the color is seen. So in this case, what we can do, we can go back to our main application and say border thickness is 0 and border brush is equal to null. So you could see that there is no border brush, and you are also having a drop shadow effect of green or red. Maybe I think yellow will be much green. Even in green, I think sea green will be doing much justice. So you now have a border here, shadow, which is not much visible, but it is there. So that's it. So this is how you create um, toggle button, and you can now create multiple toggle buttons. Let us put inside a stack panel and create multiple toggle buttons, and each toggle button uh, let us try to give a margin. The whole toggle button itself needs to have a margin, so maybe it is possible to put it here in this toggle button itself. Set a property margin value is equal to 5, so we always have a default margin value, and main window, so ours is here. Let us restart the application. Okay, so now let's have different options. So first one is height is going to be only 40, and width is going to be 120, and I will do the same. Switch width is going to be 50, 40, and this one let us adjust to corner radius. Let us give the corner radius. Corner radius is 40, right? So 20. Okay, the border is now creating an issue for us. The border cannot be white, it has to be transparent. And if I give transparent, I don't get this shape. So what I need now is I need to have a border, but that should also have a corner radius taking from the parent. So border is okay, white. Corner radius is taking from template binding corner radius. Okay, now that looks fine. I go back to my main application. Let us create multiple. So let us put some margin here as well. Margin is equal to 40. Okay. So now we have this one which is already working, and let us try to add different colors and different shapes for the other ones. So the height, let's make it 40, 40, 40. So So in the second one, let it be like this. So we know that we are having this one, and the remaining ones, let's try to adjust the color and say. So this time I will change the label here and say label on is null. Or we can do one more thing. What if we don't want to show the on off itself? We don't want to show the button itself. We will do that shortly. But before that, here in the third one, let's say corner radius is equal to 10. So we'll have a small round shape here, or maybe 15. Instead of a circular shape, we have small shape here. This also looks better. This third one, I will change the color. So background is equal to uh, orange, the gray, I will put light gray. Okay, and color on, let it be Alice blue. Color of, let's take this one. I don't know what is this. We'll also try to modify this to on, off, and foreground as well. We will make it go away so that it will be black. On, off. So there is only one final thing pending, which is to make this text itself go away. To do that, inside this one, we'll add a new property. Let's add a boolean and say display text. In this one, simple toggle button, and by default, let it be true. Okay, now that we have added a property called display text, we need this to be taken here. So this text block, whenever we have the property display is true, the visibility should be enabled, or else the visibility should be collapsed or hidden. To do that, let us go to our previous text block here. Along with the data trigger, we will add one more trigger, and this trigger will be data trigger binding, binding, and display text. Relative source. If the value of templated parent display text is false, static resource false, then we set the setter property visibility is collapsed. By default, we should have a value, and the default value will be visible. So by default, it is visible. Whenever the display text is false, then visibility should be collapsed. Let us try to run this and check if it is working or not. So now that we have them here, let's go to the main application, and the last one I will just say display text is false, and immediately you could see that the text is now gone. You only have on off, and here you have this one. And is there something that we could do with the colors? We can do anything we want. Maybe we will change the color here. Color on is equal to green, dark sea green. Color off is equal to red, medium violet red. There you go. So this is how we create a toggle button. Now we'll go through this again. First step is to define inside a separate library. This control should be output type should be a class type instead of it will be in a Windows application. Just make it as class library, so that you will have all the access to WPF items. And the first thing that you would add when you are going to the add a new item here, what you see is user control. You don't need any user control. What you need is a custom control. So do remember to add a custom control from WPF here. So this custom control. So when you add this custom control, you will get a folder called themes and then a generic. And, and the control that you have added, you can derive it by default. It will be deriving from control. Just derive it from toggle button, so that all the properties like is checked, all the control properties like background, border brush, everything will be retained from there. So here we are adding couple of new properties. And the UI side, once we define how our UI is going to look, in case you want to test how your UI looks, you can always go ahead and test them out in a separate place. In case you don't want this, you can delete the finally you can delete the control as well. I mean, like the control or the window where you are testing the UI. And finally, this everything goes into the style and inside the control template. And step by step, based upon your requirement, you can add properties, and you can consume or avail those properties in your UI, and you can test them out. And that's it. This toggle button is already a part of Haley controls. In case you want to directly start using the control, I would suggest adding a reference in your application. Use manage get, search for Haley and Haley WPF. If you install Haley WPF, you would get the Haley libraries, and it's already a part of Haley library. It's not called a simple toggle button, it is called as plain toggle button with almost all the same properties. Whatever we have here is present there. You can check it out as well. Thank you.